2 weeks ago, I challenged everyone in the community to take part in a 1-hour population challenge in City Skylines 2 on a custom map that I created specifically for the occasion. The rules were simple. You only have 1 hour to build, no disasters, money is enabled, no mods except for visual enhancers, official asset packs are allowed, your city must look attractive and interesting at the end, and no cheese tactics, like spamming parks for XP. This point's going to become important later on, but more on that in a bit. I promised to showcase the largest cities and let you vote for your favorite based on its attractiveness, with the winner receiving an item of their choice from my merch store, along with a $50 Steam gift card. And you all delivered. A total of 62 cities were submitted, and I have to say, I'm thoroughly impressed with the results. There were some truly outstanding cities of all sizes, and it's honestly fantastic to see the unique approaches people took to the challenge. It's always inspiring to witness just how creative this community can be. The top 5 cities had populations ranging from 16,550 to 25,531. You heard that right, they all surpassed the size of my city. Now, I'm going to show you each one of these cities, but I should mention that one of them was disqualified for breaking the cheese rule and for using mods. I'm sorry, Ground Zero, but I'll still showcase your city. Voting is now available in the community tab, so after watching the video, be sure to cast a vote for your favorite build. Also, check out the playlist in the pinned comment. It features submissions from several content creators, including some who are brand new. There are so many incredible builds to explore, so let's show them some love. And without any further ado, let's take a look at the builds, starting with the smallest and working our way up to 25,000 in population. Our first submission is from Poplar Ponderosa, and if that name sounds familiar, it's because Poplar is a very good map creator who has a number of excellent maps on the Paradox Mod store. Now, they've created this city right here, which is a population of 16,550, and it barely made the cut. The next city below Poplar's was 70 less in population, so good job sneaking in a couple more buildings before your hour was up. Now, there's a couple of interesting things about this build. Poplar left in the notes that the main goal was to have as many French assets in this build as possible, and most of those are going to be found in this area right here. But before we get here, let's take a look at the entryway into the city, because there is this absolutely fascinating and funny accident. It looks like people are rushing to get into the city so quickly that they got into a terrible accident. And I do wonder if this actually stopped Poplar Ponderosa's population growth, if more people would have moved in here if it weren't for this accident. Anyway, you come into town and there's this roundabout right here with a free right. So the roundabout leads to this suburban area right here with a whole bunch of low density buildings and a couple of businesses right here to serve these areas, which is something that I love. Over here, we've got some low rent housing, some more commercial, and then something that I hadn't really considered myself, all of the industrial is right here. And that's because the wind blows in this direction, so this is a fairly reasonable spot to put all the industrial, along with the landfill, and right here is a tram depot because the city has trams. Now, you might notice that there's a little bit of terrain disrespect over here. Not the end of the world, but it is something to keep an eye on. A little bit right here. Now, Poplar did flatten out this area, which is completely fine. You could have really done whatever you wanted with the terrain. I said nothing about it. So Poplar flattened this area out and created this awesome arterial couplet right here with a central park in the middle. And this is one of the things that I absolutely love about this build. Lots of attention to detail with the landscaping, unique use of parks, and really the creation of this area that really frames out this entire city. You can see that Poplar has used a ton of French assets. They're all throughout here. We've got a French police station right here. And then there's a communications tower. And I was puzzling at this for a while. And what it makes me think is that Poplar was potentially trying to use this as an Eiffel Tower. And if that was the intention, I love it. And if it was accidental, I still love it. It's super cool. The tram is right about here. You can see that there is a tram loop that loops around this entire area. And I'll run the build. The population will probably change a little bit. The tram loop goes through the entire community. It's absolutely a nice touch. I didn't even think about including a tram. I went straight for trains, but you don't have to have trains to have rail in your city. You can have trams as well. Now, I can't help but think that one of the reasons why there's all of this residential out here and right here, the low density stuff, is because Poplar was trying to keep as much of it out of the French area as possible, trying to make sure that they were meeting the demand of the city, making sure that there was low density because the city's demanding it, but at the same time, making sure that this area right here, where we have all of our French assets, is as French as possible. And honestly, I think they've done the trick. Up here, we have a whole bunch of the European beachfront properties, which is a nice, again, I think it's a pretty nice touch up in this area. Lastly, I wanted to take a look at the transit utilization, considering there are trams in this build, and you can see that 1,000 people per month are taking this little tram loop right here, which is super cool to see. A couple more small details that I wanted to point out. Right here, you can see that Poplar drew in a surface behind the police department, which is a nice touch. And you can see that in a number of places, Poplar's actually remove parking where it doesn't make sense to have it, which is one of those really nice touches that they didn't necessarily have time to do, but took the time to do anyway, which I love to see. They also took the time to name this a French word that I am not going to attempt to pronounce because I will butcher it, but that is, again, even more detail. Now, this isn't something that you should grade them on, but I thought it'd be fun to take a look at this in each of the builds. To have this be in the green, Poplar has jacked the taxes up to 30% for everything across the board because they've taken out a whole bunch of loans just like I did, which I think is absolutely hilarious. But in general, this is an absolutely fantastic build and incredibly beautiful in my opinion. Up next, we have La Platita from Alguendo 87 with a population of 18,223. Now, if this name sounds familiar, it's because Alguendo 87 goes by G87 on the Paradox Mods Workshop and has released a number of excellent mods, including surfaces, decals, and even some maps. And I'm guessing that if you play with mods, you're likely using some of their assets. I know that I am. Now, this city is called La Platita because it's based on La Plata, Argentina, which is the capital of Argentina. And if you aren't familiar with Argentina's planning, there are a lot of master plan cities and a lot of grids, so it's really cool to see the inspiration here. Now, one of the things that I think is really special about this build is that this is one of the few builds where the industrial is not completely separated from the rest of the build. In fact, I would say that this has some of the better land use planning out of all of the submissions. You can see that it feels very natural. It feels like there's a gradient and a transition of uses, which I love to see. And you can see how they've accomplished this with their zoning. They've got a whole bunch of residential kind of away from this arterial right here, all the commercial along their arterial. And then as you get towards the industrial area, they have a mixture of commercial and offices before we have all of our industrial. And because of the way that the wind blows on this map, this industrial will not pollute this area. The ground pollution will be a problem, but all the air pollution will blow this way, which is great to see. And where we have the industrial very close to the residential, they very wisely left a bit of a buffer. So absolutely excellent land use planning. Now you might be wondering how they were able to make this big grid. They've flattened out the map quite a bit, which is completely fine to do. And honestly, I think the way that they've accomplished this looks really, really, really good. Moving away from the center city, you can see that they were starting to develop some suburbs and trying to use some more organic patterns here. And it looks like attempting to respect the topography a little bit, although it might have gotten away from them a little bit right here. Still looks very good, feels very natural. I like the way that they've really respected roadway hierarchy. You can definitely tell that there are arterials leading into the center right here. We have this large roundabout that disperses traffic throughout the entire area. It's just all really well laid out. Now, another interesting feature of this map, besides all of the excellent land use planning, and even the great way that they've zoned this to leave plazas in the center, is that this city actually has a balanced budget. This is not an artificially balanced budget. They've gone through, and though they did take out some loans, they are in the green. And with taxes, they actually have 0% taxes on residential to try to encourage people to move into the city. The way that they were able to accomplish this is by adjusting some of their services. So things like roads had the budget turned down to 50%, which honestly, I think is a pretty good strategy. So they were able to accomplish this rapid growth in a very natural way. And as a result, this is one of the builds that still has a whole bunch of demand, which I love to see. And this is another build where I think that they were very wise to increase the capacity of the city right away. But one of the things that I thought was really fascinating is to disperse traffic and force a right-hand turn or right-hand turn lanes. They dropped this down to 2 lanes right here. It's just really well thought out. Things like this pedestrian overpass right here to make sure that we're not blocking up traffic. All of those sorts of things are nice little details that honestly, I'm impressed they were able to fit it in within an hour. Even got a little bit of parking right here. Lots of little details, which is awesome to see. All in all, this is a really impressive build from Elgendo87. This is a build that is really well laid out, and the land use planning is up there with the very best of them. So absolutely excellent submission. Thank you for submitting this. Really, really enjoyed looking at it. Up next, we have Lars' city, which has a population of 18,843. And this is a really unique build for a number of reasons. First and foremost, this is the first build that has a video. So if you want to check out Lars' build of this, they have a video, which I will link in the description below. But this is a build where they have trains. They've actually gone for trains, and they've laid things out similar to the way that I did it, but slightly different. They've attempted to respect the topography, but they've also made a bit of their own. It's a very interesting build. So we'll start it over here. And one of the things that jumped out to me right away is that they've really tried to make sure that the city has some semblance of separation from this entryway. That's because this road right here coming into town has a ton of traffic. So they've set it up so that you could loop through the island without getting stuck in this tangle here, which is a really nice feature. We've got a train right here, so you could come to town with a train. They've also added this French train station, which I think is one of the best assets in the game. Absolutely beautiful. Down here, we've got some French assets. We've got some low-density European and some of our low-rent French housing right here. Along the coast, there's a bunch of palm trees and some beachfront European properties. Now, an interesting thing right here is that we've basically got a frontage road with a highway that loops all the way around. So from a transportation standpoint, if you wanted to get around the island really quickly via car, you could do that. Now, one thing that you might have noticed is that whereas a lot of builds would have had the power right here, if they were going to have a whole bunch of wind turbines, this build has them right here. That was a really wise decision. And that's because from a noise standpoint, if the wind is going this way, the noise from these turbines wouldn't bother this community at all right here. Now, the way that they were able to do that is that they've created their own hill right here. They didn't always hit the hill, but they got close to it, and it makes a ton of sense. Now, right here, we've got a mid-sized German city, and I think that this is where most of the population is in this build. And I gotta tell you, I absolutely love Lars's use of this park right here. I have not really used this park all that much, and Lars used it 3 times. And just look at the way that they were able to create a proper central park for this area by combining these parks with their own paths in creative ways. And because the assets spawn different colors, it doesn't feel repetitive. It honestly feels really, really nice. So I'm happy to see that. Now, I'm not gonna lie, I wish that we had about another 2 minutes, or that Lars would have had another 2 minutes in this challenge, because you can see that some of these blocks are starting to fill in while others still have a whole bunch of growth. And one of the interesting things about Lars's build is that this is another build that is actually in the green. This one, though, is not just a little in the green, it's making an absolute boatload of money, which is impressive considering that they have a bunch of train infrastructure. Now, the way that they were able to do this is by going ahead in their taxes. They've lowered things a little bit, raised a couple of things, not a whole lot to see there. But in services, they've gone ahead and lowered things that really they don't need to pay a ton for. So lowering things like roads and transportation, for instance, to balance the budget, which in my opinion makes a ton of sense. They've also raised the service fee for water and sewage and happened to make a little bit of money here, which is outstanding. They did take out some loans, but it's not really hurting them all that much because they didn't take out all that many. So very impressive. Definitely beat me in that regard. Now again, similar to Poplar Ponderosa, they have their industrial right here, which again is the perfect location considering the wind blows this way. I can't believe I didn't see this, but it makes a ton of sense. I really do respect that they have respected the topography to a certain extent. Right here, we do have that original starting area that was relatively flat. We're up on the hill right here. They've attempted to switch back up to the German part of their city, and they've even sloped this very nicely and kept the steep cliff edges right here to show that they've blasted to have this road right here. So in general, I think that they've done a very good job working with this map, having a variety of different architecture styles blend seamlessly together and still have a city that functions really well. Now, because they've included transit, I do want to check out the utilization. Look at that, almost 5,000 people coming into the city per month using transit. Absolutely outstanding. And look at this, I've resumed the build. A ton of people are moving in still. A ton of money is pouring into the city. I'm pretty darn impressed, not gonna lie. So all in all, excellent job, Lars. And again, if you want to check out Lars's build, I'll leave a link to the video of it in the video description. Up next, we have Ground Zero City, which has a population of 22,014, roughly double what my city had for a population. So very impressive population. You might be wondering, how in the heck is this 22,000 in population? This is not 22,000 in population. There is another city way out there. And because of that, I have to disqualify this one. They left the island and began building elsewhere. And it's a little cheesy in my opinion. The main reason why is because they have a road that enters right here. This road is going to allow people to get to your city a ton faster. So that is a little bit of cheese in my estimation. It's also kind of against the spirit of what we were trying to do here. That said, I am incredibly impressed. First of all, this city out here doesn't look half bad. The fact that they were able to buy all these tiles and not bankrupt themselves is really impressive. And they did link this little island right here with a passage into the upside down to this other island right here with a gigantic tunnel that goes all the way under the ocean. Now, this is actually, look at this. They're making almost $30,000 per hour. And this is not cheese here in America. So if we look into this, we can see that, wow, this is crazy. They have tile upkeep, they have loan interest, and they still have a boatload of money. You might think they just crank the taxes up. No, they actually have really low taxes, some of the lowest tax rates of anyone that we've seen so far. They didn't even cut the road budget down. What they did is increase the budget for their electricity. So that means that they didn't have to build as many power plants. And honestly, they just grew the city a lot. All they had to do to balance the budget was grow the city to an appropriate size to support the infrastructure that they had, and they were able to do that. Now, the other reason that I had to disqualify this one is that Ground Zero used a couple of mods. I know Recolor is just Recolor, but it was still in the mods list, and they recorded the entire build. And in that, I could see that Find It was also in there. So I don't know what other mods were included in the build. That said, they did include a video, and I will share that with you. A link to that video is in the video description. And honestly, even though they used mods, even though they cheesed things a little bit, I'm still pretty darn impressed with the ending population. And if we resume this, I think that we're going to see that the population continues to increase, and there's room to continue to grow this thing because there's a lot of infrastructure in place. So again, this one will not be available to vote for, but I did want to show it to you because honestly, it's still pretty impressive, even if they violated the rules just a little bit. So nice work, Ground Zero, and next time, maybe you'll get it. Maybe you'll get it. And lastly, we have Reik City, which has a population of, check this, 25,531. This is a mind-blowing number to me, and here we are. So this is a city that is inspired by a cruise that Reik went on in Newfoundland, Canada, in the city of Corner Brook. So very, very cool to see. So you can see that there is a cruise ship port right here, which is I would have never thought to add this to the build. They've definitely done a bit of terraforming to make this harbor right here. It looks absolutely outstanding. And they've assured me on multiple occasions that this was done in an hour. Here's the thing. The way that I was able to check to see if all of these builds occurred within an hour is the date. And the date of this build is actually 1 month less than many of the other builds that I took a look at. So they accomplished this in less time than some of the other builders. They practiced this on a number of occasions, and that was totally fine to do. You could try to attempt the challenge as many times as you want and submit the one that was the best, and that's what they've done. So one of the things that they did that was really unique is they actually worked their way towards a signature building. So we've got the paper factory right here, and this is absolutely really smart because this has a ton of jobs and it boosts your city's efficiency, making it more profitable which is one of the reasons that we're making a little bit of money right here. And honestly, considering they have a gigantic loan, it's pretty impressive that they're making any money at all. But it's not because of cheese, because you can see that they've actually lowered taxes and their service budget is actually in check as well. So pretty darn impressive. Now, bluntly, this city still wants to grow. I resume this and you can see that people are just pouring in here. And I absolutely adore that he's really gone all in with all of the harbors. We've got passengers right here. We've got cargo right here. The land use, the layout of the city is really, really exceptional. Again, we don't have very much separation in between the residential and the industrial right here, but it works because they provided a bit of buffering right here with some landscaping and the wind blows in this direction. So they were able to pull it off and make it look outstanding. Right here, they've got what appears to be a little bit of a suburb on the hill, respecting the topography, nestled above the center of their city. They were able to actually, it appears, to control the heights to kind of make everything come to a crescendo right here, which is absolutely outstanding. They've got good service coverage on this entire area, a nice arterial highway coming through here so that the whole city isn't choked with traffic. They're using a nice variety of assets. They've got a number of the French assets right here, number of the European row homes. You can see that the traffic is really doing well right here. And because they didn't use trains, they got rid of the train line that I brought into the city. I've got to say, stuff like this is really impressive to me, where they were able to add upgrades, considering they are in the green. So they didn't do what I did. They were able to stay in the green, taking out loans and ending with a positive balance, which is really, really impressive. Now, similar to Poplar Ponderosa, I think that they're using these French water towers as lighthouses, and I really like the way that they're using these. And one thing you might notice is that there is what you might consider a bit of cheese out here with the wind turbines. But honestly, I think that this is a completely fine thing to do. I think it makes a lot of sense. And again, this is a build where they were able to deal with tile upkeep and not have it completely bankrupt the city. I think a little bit of power out here makes a lot of sense. They don't have an outside connection, which is the reason why I allowed this and not the one that I disqualified. But I think that ultimately one of the things that impresses me the most about this, and maybe it's not, I mean, honestly, this is just an impressive build in general, is that they've respected the topography basically everywhere. Even where they've had to make their own, they've tried to do their best to make sure that everything's reasonable. And there are very few places where you find areas like this. And even this one right here is pretty reasonable. For the most part, they've respected the topography, or at least graded to make it appear that they've respected the topography. This is just a really outstanding build. I am super, super, super impressed. And Reik, I know that you said that the recordings are available if I'm interested. I think that you should post them because I think a lot of other people would be interested in knowing how you were able to create such an interesting build in 1 hour flat. Next, I want to show you each of the builds side by side with the name of the author and their submission number shown, so you can easily select your favorite build to vote on. So let's have a brief cities tour. And those are the submissions, and I'm genuinely impressed with all of them. Each one offer a unique take on the challenge, resulting in builds that are both fascinating and beautiful. If you made it this far, please click on the link in the pinned comment to cast your vote in the community tab. The winner will be whoever has the most votes by noon Central Standard Time on the 24th. One final note, this challenge was a dry run for a larger competition, which will happen early next year, likely in January or February. After the new NVIDIA graphics cards are announced, I'll pick one up and we'll hold another competition. This time, your creativity and build time will be unlimited. Well, within constraints. You'll be able to create anything you want on this map using a curated set of popular mods along with all available content for the game at that time. Stay tuned for more details. But with that, I think we're gonna leave it here. And I really hope that you've enjoyed this one. I want to give a huge shout out to every single person who submitted a city and every content creator who created for this challenge. It's an absolute privilege to be able to bring things like this to you, and I've really enjoyed doing so, and I hope that you've enjoyed it as well. Thank you so much for joining me, and I can't wait to see you next time. Take care. Bye-bye.